Chapter 1. Number 1. Independent Women in Sweden. Number 1. Independent women in Sweden. Your gallantry will not be appreciated by Swedish women. In fact, it may even be seen as an infringement on their autonomy. As soon as the meal ends, the ping from the payment app on the phone will ring out, signaling that the other party has transferred their 50% share of the bill, including taxes and service fees. Women here do not need a sponsor for the meal. They simply want a partner to converse with. Your insistence on paying the entire bill may make the other person feel as if they owe you an unwanted emotional debt. In this country, they use the Swish app, a payment system that allows users to transfer money and make instant payments via mobile phone numbers. With over 8 million users in Sweden, splitting the bill right at the table helps reduce psychological conflicts and lowers men's hopes for a romantic encounter after the meeting. The reason Swedish women have such a straightforward attitude is that they directly hold the political and economic lifeblood of the nation. With 158 out of 349 seats in parliament, women here are the ones drafting legislation. They occupy nearly half of the leadership positions in major corporations. It is common to see women owning more than men, which completely eliminates the pressure on men to be the providers in the social structure. Sweden implements a public income disclosure law, and financial transparency allows women to hold economic power equivalent to men, reducing divorce rates caused by financial responsibility conflicts. This independence and power leads women in this country to rarely overpolish their appearance to attract the opposite sex. They prioritize neutral-colored outfits, coarse wool, or high-durability leather to withstand the dry, cold air characteristic of Northern Europe. They possess naturally porcelain white skin that maximizes UV absorption to synthesize vitamin D. Blue eyes and blonde hair, biological traits often associated with Nordic populations. The average height of Swedish women is around 167.7 centimeters, and their high omega-3 intake from a diet rich in salmon helps maintain skin elasticity in sub-zero temperatures despite humidity often dropping below 30%. To coexist with such independent women, Swedish men must completely redefine their concept of masculinity. They focus on disciplined fitness training and grooming. A man who is willing to take a 6-month leave to stay home and care for the children, allowing his wife to advance in her career, is seen as a true strong man. A polished appearance with precisely tailored suits reflects careful preparation for long-term relationships. Swedish men spend an average of $1,500 each year on premium personal care products. Their sharing of 50% of child care time helps increase the rate of women advancing to senior management positions by over 40% compared to the global average. Chapter 2. Number 2. Sweden lives in darkness. Sweden ranks fourth in the world for happiness, but this happiness is built on a foundation of antidepressants and billion-dollar welfare packages. Located near the Arctic Circle, Sweden's geographical position turns the sun into a visitor that only stops by for a few hours each day during winter. You find yourself commuting to work in complete darkness and returning home when the streets are already lit up. As a result, money and financial security cannot compensate for a brain starved of light, leading to widespread psychological instability. Approximately 10% of the Swedish population relies on antidepressants annually, forcing the national healthcare system to prioritize funding for psychological therapies. When the sun completely disappears, your body automatically stops producing serotonin, the neurotransmitter that induces feelings of happiness, and instead produces melatonin, which keeps you in a constant state of drowsiness and lethargy. Seasonal affective disorder can turn even the strongest men into apathetic beings with diminished willpower. In the far northern region of Kiruna, the sun disappears for a continuous 28 days, and the acute deficiency of vitamin D during this period increases the risk of osteoporosis and reduces natural immune cell regeneration. The government has been compelled to install high-intensity light therapy boxes at bus stops to force citizens to absorb artificial sunlight into their retinas. These bright white lights shine directly into the eyes, tricking the brain into believing it is daytime, helping the body avoid entering a state of hibernation during work hours. The glare and warmth from the high-power bulbs help maintain alertness when you have to go to work at 9 a.m. while it is still dark outside. This is a mandatory biological intervention technique to sustain productivity and prevent the collapse of the national mental health system. The light boxes of the bus stops emit an intensity of 10,000 lux, exposing the retina for at least 20 minutes each morning to suppress melatonin and stimulate production of energizing cortisol. The light from phenomenon of the midnight sun in summer is the only saving grace for bodies that have depleted their energy after the hibernation period. The sun shines continuously for 24 hours, allowing the entire nation to celebrate before the cycle of darkness returns. During this critical time, people flood the streets to replenish their necessary vitamins and minerals through natural light. Making the most of this time helps the liver and kidneys accumulate enough energy reserves to survive the next 6 months of darkness. Chapter 3. Number 3. Why Swedes are comfortable with extremely high taxes. Swedish citizens are satisfied with the high tax rates. The feeling of disappointment when looking at the paycheck in Sweden is a test of endurance for those men who are tirelessly working day and night. The personal income tax rate here ranges from 50% to 60%, making it one of the highest in the world. Your cash is used to support a massive welfare system, rendering dreams of quick wealth through salaries almost fanciful. The highest progressive income tax rate in Sweden reaches 57.1%. For businesses, Social Security contributions account for up to 31.42% of the total payroll, resulting in the actual cost of hiring an employee being 1.5 times the agreed salary. This tax burden becomes even more brutal for freelancers seeking financial independence. As soon as clients transfer payments into their accounts, intermediary applications automatically deduct 50% of that amount to pay into the national treasury. The automatic payment system in Sweden is directly integrated with the tax authority, meaning freelancers without their own business tax identification number will have Social Security and personal income taxes deducted immediately from each invoice to ensure that the national budget does not lose even a cent. However, the money loss returns to your family through a free education system from kindergarten to university. You never have to face the pressure of student debt or voluntary contributions as in the U.S. because the government takes care of your children's education entirely. This is a fair trade-off to ensure that every child has an equal starting point intellectually regardless of their parents' wealth. The Swedish government spends about 7% of GDP on education. Students not only enjoy free tuition, but also have access to living expense loans at extremely low interest rates with repayment terms extending up to 25 years after graduation. The public healthcare system here is incredibly affordable. You pay less than $12 for a specialist visit and receive treatment with the most advanced equipment in public hospitals. Concerns about enormous costs after each illness are alleviated as the maximum out-of-pocket expense for healthcare in Sweden is around $130 per year. Once you reach this limit, all medical consultations and prescription medications are fully covered by the state for the remainder of the fiscal year. As soon as you have a child, the government injects money into your account. Each child under 16 in Sweden brings a monthly allowance to the family without any complicated paperwork. The notification of a $125 payment on the 20th of each month serves as fuel to maintain your family's standard of living. The child allowance is automatically transferred to the parent accounts. For families with 2 or more children, the government applies an additional bonus that increases with the number of children, allowing total support to exceed $600 per month for families with 4 children. Chapter 4, Number 4. Jantelagen, the rule that crushes arrogance. You will be ostracized by society if you dare to boast about your personal success in front of others. This is the unwritten rule of Jantelagen in Sweden, which compels individuals to accept that they are not superior to the collective. Any effort to stand out from the crowd leads to isolation from the surrounding community. Most Swedes admit to adhering to the principles of Jantelagen, and violating these unwritten rules can reduce trust in business transactions and social relationships. Millionaires in Stockholm choose to drive old Volvos and wear minimalist logo-free clothing to blend seamlessly into the crowd. Displaying wealth through luxury cars or expensive watches is considered rude and creates a sense of exclusion within the community. Any ostentation of wealth is discouraged to prevent feelings of envy or unhealthy competition from arising. Sweden has one of the lowest levels of luxury goods consumption in the OECD relative to income. Owning designer items is often justified under the pretext of durability or environmental protection to avoid judgment from neighbors. This egalitarian mindset renders a title director a meaningless line on a business card, as employees have the right to address the CEO by their first name daily. The flat organizational structure completely eliminates intermediaries and most forms of honorifics in office communication. You will face sharp arguments and direct criticism from subordinates right in meetings without any form of deference. Over 90% of Swedish businesses operate under a flat management model, which shortens decision-making processes and removes costs associated with supervisory roles that do not directly create value. The strength of Jantelagen also lies in the mutual surveillance system among neighbors to ensure that no one exceeds common standards. If you paint your house in an overly bright color or let your grass grow taller than neighborhood regulations allow, you may receive an anonymous reminder letter or be stripped of access to communal amenities. This community monitoring system helps Sweden maintain a property crime rate lower than the EU average, with the cost of maintaining this normality being the acceptance of giving up the desire for prominence. Chapter 5. Number 5. Why you become invisible living in Sweden. In this country, each individual surrounds themselves with an invisible circle that is at least 2 meters wide, which no one is allowed to invade. At bus stops, you will see men standing far apart from each other, maintaining absolute silence. Initiating a conversation with a stranger is considered rude or a sign of psychological instability. Maintaining a minimum physical distance of 1.5 meters helps Swedes reduce stress levels in public. Violating this boundary immediately puts the other person in a defensive state and creates a negative impression. Small talk is viewed as a waste of oxygen and time, and is largely avoided in Nordic communication culture. Swedes only speak when they need to address a specific issue or conduct a transaction. Silence is a form of respect for the other person's private space. Directly discussing main issues helps shorten information exchange time in the workplace and minimizes data distortion during communication. Additionally, there exists the concept of the Swedish gate, which is a strict delineation of family boundaries among the people of this country. Unexpectedly visiting someone's home or inviting guests to stay for dinner is seen as a disruption of the host's pre-planned schedule. Swedes typically set their personal schedules 1 to 2 weeks in advance. Not inviting guests for dinner allows a host to maintain complete control over household nutrition costs and schedules without being disrupted by external factors. This respect for boundaries creates a smoothly functioning yet highly segregated society. You can live next to a neighbor for 10 years without knowing their name, as long as neither party disturbs the other space. Any assistance or interaction must be based on mutual consent and clear requests rather than spontaneous intervention. This is how they protect personal freedom and avoid unnecessary conflicts in a community that values discipline. The personal separation contributes to Sweden having one of the lowest rates of civil disputes among neighbors in Europe. Chapter 6. Number 6. Children are the center of the universe. In Sweden, you could find yourself facing criminal charges if you dare to spank your screaming child in public. Any act of violence toward children, even the slightest, has been considered a criminal offense in this country since 1979. The cries of children being punished have been replaced by interventions from child protection agencies. You have no right to touch your child in the name of discipline if you do not want to risk losing custody permanently after just one report from a neighbor. Sweden was the first country in the world to ban corporal punishment to children. The social monitoring system here is so stringent that most reported cases of suspected abuse are handled by authorities within 24 hours. Children here are even allowed to refuse affectionate gestures from adults if they feel uncomfortable. Forcing a child to kiss or hug a relative as a sign of respect is considered a serious violation of personal space. Children are taught how to establish boundaries from a very young age. Respecting the right to say no helps Swedish children develop the ability to recognize abusive behavior at higher rates than children raised in cultures that emphasize absolute obedience. Adults here protect children to the extent that a practice called co-sleeping has emerged, where the entire family shares a sleeping space. Instead of sending their child to a separate room to foster American-style independence, Swedish parents choose to sleep with their children to create a sense of psychological safety. This fosters a strong biological bond, allowing the child to grow up without the trauma of abandonment. Studies indicate that co-sleeping helps reduce stress hormone levels in children, with many Swedish families maintaining this practice until the child voluntarily requests their own space. Thanks to the protection of children, men in this country enjoy 480 days of paid parental leave, requiring fathers to disappear from work for at least 90 days to fulfill their childcare duties. The state pays 80% of the actual salary for parents during this leave. The involvement of fathers through daddy months has helped reduce the divorce rate in the first 5 years after childbirth thanks to shared responsibility for family survival. Chapter 7. Number 7. A country willing to get paid to take other nations' trash. Sweden is burning waste to save millions from freezing during the winter. The country's heating system operates on the heat generated from high-tech waste incineration plants instead of relying heavily on oil or gas. Waste has become the new fossil fuel, providing electricity and hot water for nearly 20% of the national population. Sweden's waste-to-energy technology achieves extremely high thermal conversion efficiency with emission filtration systems designed to remove most dioxins and heavy metals before releasing gases into the environment. Less than 1% of waste in Sweden actually ends up in landfills thanks to the public's awareness of waste sorting. The remaining waste is crushed and sent into recycling processes or incinerated to recover maximum energy. Everything from plastic bags to food packaging is processed so aggressively that waste itself has become a rare resource in the domestic market. If the contamination rate in a household's plastic waste bin exceeds allowed levels, they can face heavy fines and may even be denied waste collection altogether. The exceptionally high recycling rates are pushing waste-to-energy plants in Sweden into a state of hunger for raw materials to maintain operations. The cost to restart an industrial incinerator after it has been shut down is extremely expensive, forcing managers to ensure that the waste stream never runs dry. Sweden imports more than 1 million tons of waste each year from countries like the UK, Italy, and Norway to fill its empty incineration chambers. Instead of spending money on fuel, the country charges neighboring nations for the right to process their waste. Countries sending trash pay fees for each ton delivered, allowing Sweden to profit from both service fees and energy output, turning foreign waste into a billion-dollar industry.